My father tossed my childhood photo into the trash, just minutes after disowning me in front of my entire family. No tears, no apology, just exile. I'm Arlena Sloan. 5 years ago, I was kicked out of my own bloodline, pregnant, broke, and erased. But they didn't know I was carrying twins, or that the man they said would leave stayed. And now that they've lost everything, I'm the only one left with something to offer. Have you ever been betrayed by the people who are supposed to protect you? What would you do if your own family tried to erase your existence? Tell me in the comments, because this story isn't just about revenge, it's about rebuilding. Let me take you back to the night everything changed. They disowned me over dinner and packed my bags before dessert. When I walked into the Monroe house that night, the air felt wrong. The table was bare. No baked ziti, no wine glasses clinking, no scent of Mom's lemon thyme roast. Just silence, and 3 pairs of eyes waiting like a jury. Douglas didn't stand. He didn't smile, just said, "You're late." I offered a half smile. "Traffic. I-17's a nightmare." No one laughed. Victor lounged smugly at the end of the couch, leg crossed like he'd already won. Mila sat upright, too perfectly, the kind of stiffness that comes from rehearsing confrontation in front of a mirror. Serena looked down at her folded hands, saying nothing. "Sit," Douglas ordered. I did, on the armrest of a chair near the window, light behind me making them harder to read. "You've been stealing," Victor began. No build-up, no mercy. He slid a printed statement across the coffee table, a section highlighted in orange. My breath caught. "What is this?" "Withdrawals from our retirement," he said. "That's not mine. I've never—" "Enough," Douglas cut in. Mila's turn. "You've been seeing that married guy from Banner Hospital, and you tried to sleep with my fiancé. He told me everything." I blinked. "What? Mila, are you serious right now?" "You've changed," Serena said, voice brittle. "We don't recognize who you've become." My hands dug into the denim of my jeans. "You're just going to believe them? No one even asked me." "We've had a family talk," Douglas said. "You're being removed from the trust, and we think it's best if you leave tonight." My ears rang. I looked around the room. The fireplace, the bookshelf I helped build, the photos lining the wall like trophies of a family I no longer belong to. "You have 1 hour," Victor said. "We packed a bag," Mila added. "It's in the hall." I stood. My body moved on autopilot. Past Serena, no glance. Past Victor and Mila, smirking, out into the hallway. My duffel bag leaned against the baseboard like luggage on a curb. In the garage, Douglas stood near the trash bin, holding my old photo album. "Seriously?" I asked. He shrugged. "Figured you wouldn't need this where you're going." I left without a word. Outside, the sky was bleeding orange. I drove without aim, fingers trembling on the wheel, heartbeat louder than the engine. I ended up in a roadside motel off Van Buren. Buzzing AC, a bed too firm, curtains that didn't quite close. I sat. Still. Number. Until a thought punched through the fog. My period. I bolted to the gas station 2 blocks down, bought the test. Back under the yellow bathroom light, I waited. 2 lines. Positive. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just whispered to my reflection, "You were the only truth they couldn't erase." I opened my duffel bag, pulled out my old journal. The leather was cracked at the edges. I hadn't touched it in years. March 12th, junior year. Victor had copied my entire gene splicing segment during our capstone presentation. Didn't even change the wording. The professor praised him. Dad printed the email and framed it. Another page. Mila, age 14. Grandma gave me her pearl bracelet. Mila called me ugly, said I only got it because I wasn't pageant pretty. She laughed loud enough for the whole brunch table to hear. I kept reading. Memory after memory. And then, beneath the mattress, tucked inside a hollowed-out book, I found it. Grandma's sapphire wedding ring. No one knew she left it to me. Mila wore it at her wedding. Announced it during the toast. Grandma always said I was the first daughter to marry. No one questioned her. Not even me. I sat with the ring in my palm, my entire past flashing like a slideshow I hadn't chosen to see. And then, a knock. 3 soft raps. Familiar rhythm. I opened the door. Silas. Same eyes. Same quiet presence. No questions. No accusations. "You okay?" he asked. I couldn't answer. I stepped back. He came in. No hug. No drama. He sat by the window. I sat on the bed. "I didn't expect you," I whispered. He looked at the pregnancy test on the table. Didn't flinch. "Want to get out of here?" I nodded. We drove. No music. Just dry air and the hum of Arizona evening. He parked outside a rundown diner. We sat in a booth that smelled like burnt toast. "I'm pregnant," I said. He didn't blink. He took a napkin, scribbled a word, slid it across. Together. And for the first time in weeks, I exhaled. Not because everything was okay, but because it finally could be. They buried the truth so deep, they forgot it could still bleed. After that night, I didn't go home. I didn't have one. Silas and I found a small studio apartment above a laundromat. It smelled like detergent and rust, but it was ours. I spent most days with one hand on my belly and the other scrolling through job boards I didn't qualify for. Nights were worse. Quiet, except for the noise in my head. Silas said little, which I appreciated. His presence was steady, like a rhythm I hadn't known I needed. But the silence couldn't hold everything. Especially not the question clawing at the back of my mind. Why had my name never felt like mine? One night, I sat at the rickety kitchen table, the flickering light bulb humming like a bad memory. In my hand was the bracelet Grandma had once given me, a delicate band of pearls I'd managed to save before they threw me out. I ran my fingers across each bead like I was tracing a map backward. It started small. A birth certificate. Mine was missing from the family safe. When I asked Serena for a copy once for college paperwork, she handed me a photocopy. Cropped, blurry, with a coffee stain through my middle name. So I went digging. Silas reached out to a friend of his, a lawyer named Sarah Keyes. She specialized in estate law, inheritance disputes, and what she called rich people messes. She agreed to meet us over lunch at a downtown cafe that tried too hard to be rustic. I came with a stack of documents in a crumbling file folder and questions I hadn't had the courage to ask for years. Sarah flipped through the pages slowly. Birth certificate, school records, a medical consent form from when I had my appendix removed at 13. She paused. "Do you know what's missing here?" "A parent's signature?" I guessed. She nodded. "Specifically, your father's. This line's blank." Silas leaned in. "Could it be?" She raised a brow. "Has anyone ever done a DNA test?" I froze. My heart stuttered in my chest. Why would I? Sarah slid a form across the table. "Let's find out." That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay on my side staring at the outline of the window. The moonlight painted a sliver of silver across the ceiling. "If I don't belong to them," I whispered to no one, "who do I belong to?" The results came 2 weeks later. I was in our kitchen, balancing a pan of overcooked pasta in one hand and my phone in the other when the email pinged. Paternity not established with Douglas Monroe. I sat down on the linoleum floor. The pasta burned. The world tilted. Silas knelt beside me, reading the results over my shoulder. So I'm not his. It didn't feel like betrayal. It felt like confirmation, like an echo finally catching up to its origin. We told Sarah. She nodded, unsurprised. I did some digging on my own, she said. Your biological father's name is Gregory Larkson. The name hit like a thunderclap. The biotech magnate? Silas asked. Sarah nodded. He made his money developing low-cost hormone diagnostics. A brilliant bastard if I've ever seen one. And he's been trying to reach you for years. I didn't respond. Just stared at the name. Larkson. It didn't feel like mine, but it didn't feel wrong either. Sarah handed me another folder. Inside was a scanned copy of a handwritten letter addressed to Serena, dated 25 years ago. Let me be in her life. I'll stay quiet. I'll stay clean. I just want her to know who she is. It was signed Gregory. She never let him in, Sarah said. But he kept records. Quiet donations. A college fund in your name, closed by Serena before you turned 15. I couldn't breathe. Silas looked at me, his voice low. They erased him from your story, I whispered, and from mine. Have you ever found out you were never who they said you were? That your entire identity was built on someone else's decision to keep you in the dark? If you've lived through that kind of silence, leave a comment number 7 below. Now let's see what happened next. That night, as I lay in bed with one arm cradling my belly, I pulled out my old journal again. There, between pages yellowed by time, was a note Grandma once wrote to me after I failed a biology exam. You carry a mind they fear, and a heart they'll never deserve. Keep both. 2 days later, a package arrived. No return address. Just my name, scrawled in black ink. Inside was a personal check for $50,000. No note. Just a single word in the memo line. Start. Silas stared at it like it might explode. Do you think? I know. That night, I returned to the hollowed-out book under the bed and pulled out the sapphire ring again. I was never a Monroe, I said aloud. And I wasn't. I was someone else entirely. Someone just getting started. They put his name on my work. I'm about to engrave mine where it can't be erased. After the DNA results and the check from Gregory, something in me shifted. Not like a light switch. More like a fault line finally cracking open. I wasn't just a pregnant girl dumped by her family. I was the rightful owner of something far bigger. My name, my voice, and my research. The project Victor stole from me during our undergrad capstone, SOVIQ, was never his. It was mine, born from nights in the lab, caffeine-fueled data runs, and a desperation to prove that low-cost hormone diagnostics could be scalable in underserved communities. Now, with 50 grand in seed funding and nothing left to lose, I started building it back. My way. Silas helped convert our living room into a workspace. Whiteboards lined the walls, crammed with hormone pathway models, timelines, target clinics. Our coffee table became a chemistry station, and my laptop was never off. He never hovered. Just made sure I ate, stretched, and once left me a post-it that read, "You're building something they never saw coming." That made me cry harder than the pregnancy nausea ever could. One night I sat alone, typing edits into my pitch deck under the weak yellow glow of a desk lamp. The baby kicked. I paused and whispered, "They stole it from me before you were even real, but we're taking it back together." My free hand rested over my stomach like a seal. We registered the LLC under the name SOVIQ Biosystems, short for Somatic Ovarian Quantification. I stayed up late rewriting the pitch deck that Victor had gutted 2 years ago. I changed the tone. Sharper. Fiercer. No more apologizing. Then came the Regional Biotech Showcase, a 2-day event in Phoenix for emerging founders. I wasn't officially invited, but Sarah, yes, Sarah the lawyer, called in a favor. She got me a 10-minute slot on stage. I walked in alone, 5 months pregnant, in a blazer that barely buttoned. People stared, whispered. One woman glanced at my belly and muttered, These founders get younger and braver every year. I wasn't sure if it was a compliment or a dismissal. I smiled anyway. The stage lights were merciless. They magnified every drop of sweat, every beat of hesitation. But I stood straight, center stage, feet planted. The hum of the microphone steadied me. Victor was already on the agenda, presenting his new proprietary algorithm for female hormone prediction. I nearly laughed. Silas sat in the back row. Sarah watched from the legal booth, arms crossed. When they called my name, I took the stage with my heart steady and my pitch memorized to the bone. Good afternoon. My name is Arlena Monroe, founder of SOVIQ Biosystems. But long before that, I was the invisible architect of a project that's already been stolen once. Today, I'm here to reclaim it. A few heads turned. Slide by slide, I walked them through the science, clinical gaps, false negative statistics in hormone testing, the misdiagnosis rates for endometriosis in rural clinics, and then the tech. A proprietary method for mapping hormonal shifts using non-invasive markers. Someone gasped when I showed the prototype sketches. Another when I displayed a screenshot of the original submission time-stamped 2 years before Victor's innovation. I ended with the line, "We don't need more men presenting our pain. We need tools that work." Silence. Then, applause. Victor was next. He walked up to the stage, jaw tight. His first slide? The same hormone curve graph I'd just shown, but with different branding and no citations. He didn't make it to slide 2 before the question started. Why is your data identical to Ms. Monroe's? Can you explain the overlap in submission timestamps? He stuttered, blamed shared research pools, then tried to laugh it off. But Sarah stood up. For the record, the patent application for that methodology was filed under Arlena Monroe, not Victor Monroe. The room shifted. People pulled out phones. Victor turned red. He stepped off stage early, muttering something about legal teams. Later, during the networking hour, an investor approached me. "Your data's airtight," she said. "And your conviction?" "Even better." She handed me her card. But it wasn't the card that floored me. It was the look on Victor's face across the room, rage and disbelief twisted together. He walked toward me. Mila trailed behind, overdressed and annoyed. "You think this changes anything?" Victor hissed. "You embarrassed me in front of the whole panel." I smiled sweetly. "No, Victor. You did that yourself." Then I walked away. Back in the car, Silas handed me a brown envelope. It was stamped, "Monroe and Sloan Attorneys." Inside, a letter, a cease and desist, from Mila, claiming I had violated family confidentiality by sharing private research history. I laughed, loud, exhausted, triumphant, because this wasn't revenge. It was just the beginning. They hid my father to protect their wealth. Now he's here to burn their castle down. With me. The day I stood beside Gregory Larkson in front of 1,000 camera flashes, I didn't feel victorious. I felt precise. Like every step I had taken, every truth I had peeled back, had led exactly to this moment. We were at the Women in Science Gala in New York, hosted at the Manhattan Grand. Velvet carpets, champagne towers, a string quartet playing something forgettable in the background. I wore a dark green satin dress stretched gently over my 7-month belly, and for the first time in my life, I didn't care what I looked like. Gregory Larkson, the father they'd erased from my life, walked beside me like a storm in a tuxedo. Reserved, focused, distant, but not cold. His hand never touched my back, but he made space for me wherever I moved. And when he introduced me to a Nobel-winning endocrinologist, he said, "This is my daughter, Arlena Sloan. She's changing the field." The name caught people. Some whispered. Some froze. One woman dropped her flute of champagne. Because they remembered. Sloane, not Monroe. The chandeliers above glimmered like crystal spines. Soft white light bounced off the marble floor and flashed across camera lenses. I could hear the clicking, the soft orchestral hum of the quartet shifting to a minor key. My stomach tensed, not from pregnancy, but the weight of being seen, not hidden, not erased, for the first time. Gregory had made the announcement earlier that evening during the press briefing. A full legal recognition of paternity, a personal grant to Sovic Biosystems, and a formal correction filed with the Larkson Foundation's board. He didn't use the word reunion. He used the word rectification. It was surgical, calculated, powerful, exactly like him. At the same time, on the other coast, the Monroe family held their annual charity cocktail fundraiser. Mila posted a photo in a blush pink gown captioned, "Family always wins. Legacy." She didn't know what was coming. At 9:17 p.m., while sipping ginger ale in place of champagne, I stepped onto the main stage and accepted the Emerging Founder Award. I didn't thank Gregory. I didn't thank Silas. I thanked data, grit, and the women who bleed in silence while systems fail them. Spotlights narrowed as I approached the mic. The audience blurred behind the stage lights, but I felt them, leaning forward, listening. My voice didn't tremble. Not anymore. When I walked off stage, Gregory was waiting. He didn't hug me. He didn't smile. "You didn't need me," he said quietly. "I wanted the truth," I replied. "Now I have both." He nodded once. "There's something else." In a side lounge, he handed me a manila envelope, thicker than I expected. Inside were records, emails, financial trails. Everything Serena and Douglas had done to keep my identity buried. Bribes, old letters returned unopened, even an NDA Serena had forged with a fake witness signature. "I've kept all of it," he said. "Wasn't sure you'd ever want it." "I do." When I stepped into the Monroe estate the next morning, my palms were dry, but my heartbeat pounded like distant war drums. The smell of citrus polish and cold air conditioning hit me first. Unchanged, artificial, curated. Everything about this house was curated, even its lies. Mila froze mid-conversation, holding a cocktail glass like a weapon. "What are you doing here?" I handed her the envelope. "You'll want to open this before your next media interview." Serena approached, voice low. "This is family business. You have no right." "No," I said, stepping back. "I have every right. You kept my father from me. You rewrote my blood. But guess what? Blood remembers." I turned, heels clicking against the marble. On the way out, Victor passed me. His jaw clenched. "You think this changes anything?" "Not yet," I said. "But it will." That evening, Silas and I sat on our balcony watching the New York skyline flicker like static. He handed me a tablet. "You should see this." News headlines scrolled across the screen. Monroe family accused of fraudulent blocking of legal paternity. Larkson Foundation confirms Air Sovic Biosystems funded in private grant. Family ties confirmed. I scrolled down. Mila had gone private on all platforms. Victor's startup partnership had been quietly dissolved. Then came the final blow. A formal notice from the court. All assets tied to the Monroe Trust are temporarily frozen pending investigation. I stared at the words for a long moment. Not out of shock, out of satisfaction. Silas sat beside me, quiet. "I didn't think you'd burn it all down this fast," he said. "I didn't," I replied. They lit the match. I just named the fire. They said I was too emotional to lead. Now they sit in silence while my evidence speaks. I arrived at the courthouse wearing the navy blazer my mother once said made me look too masculine. That morning, I buttoned it with a smile. It didn't make me soft. It made me sharp. The courthouse buzzed with quiet dread. Shoes squeaked on polished floors. The smell of stale coffee clung to the air. As I stepped into the courtroom, the fluorescent lights above hummed faintly, as if bracing for impact. I took my seat beside Renee Briggs, my attorney, my shield, my secret weapon. Victor sat 2 rows ahead, his lawyer whispering in his ear like bad advice. Mila adjusted her pearl earrings every 10 seconds. Serena wore gray like grief. Douglas didn't look up once. This wasn't just family drama. This was federal. Renee stood first. Your Honor, we are bringing forward intellectual property theft, academic fraud, and attempted financial defamation against my client, Ms. Arlena Sloan. The judge, a sharp-featured woman with eyes like steel and braids wound into a crown, nodded once. Proceed. Exhibits A through H were emails, Slack messages, screenshots, the time-stamped lab report I'd filed with Professor Enders before Victor ever pitched it, even the patent draft, which had my original formulas embedded in metadata. Renee walked the court through it methodically. Precise. I sat silent, hands clasped over my belly. Then came the recordings. It still shocked me. One clip caught Serena's voice saying, "She's too stubborn to control. Cut her out early or she'll bring us all down." The audio echoed through the high ceilings. Serena flinched. Victor looked at the table. I didn't look at them. I stared straight ahead. Inside, something old and scarred clenched, then released. The judge paused the playback. The room sat still. Renee tilted her head. That, Your Honor, is premeditated exclusion. Mila's lawyer objected, citing emotional context. Denied. Have you ever been told your emotions made you unfit, only to prove them wrong with facts? That quiet rage when you stop begging to be included and start demanding to be seen? If you've ever stood alone and still stood tall, drop a comment number 9 below. Now let's keep going. Victor tried to testify that I misunderstood the intent of the collaboration. But when asked to explain why none of my emails were included in the submitted journal draft, he stammered. I guess we forgot to include her? The judge didn't blink. You forgot to include the lead researcher? A low wave of murmurs rippled through the benches. I saw one juror raise a brow. Silas sat behind me, silent, steady. At one point, I turned slightly. He mouthed, "You're doing it." I was. Next, we brought in Professor Enders via video call. He confirmed I had authored over 70% of the submitted material. He also revealed that Victor had asked him to make the credits clean for the sake of presentation aesthetics. The term hit like a gavel. Make the credits clean, meaning remove the messy girl with the pregnant belly and the inconvenient brilliance. By noon, we had introduced 22 exhibits. Mila's face cracked under pressure. When asked whether she had authored the social media posts accusing me of manipulating data, she claimed her account had been hacked. Renee smiled, then pulled out a screenshot of Mila scheduling the post on MetaSuite. A few gasps escaped the gallery. The courtroom chuckled. Even the judge cracked the ghost of a grin. Then came the ruling. Pending full review, the court grants a temporary injunction barring Victor and Mila Monroe from any financial gain associated with Savic Biosystems, including derivative works, partnerships, or branding. Further, we recognize Ms. Sloan as the provisional patent holder and intellectual originator of the disputed model. The courtroom didn't clap, but I heard it in their silence, a silence filled with acknowledgement. A silence that weighed more than a standing ovation. Mila cried. Victor swore under his breath. Serena just stood and walked out. I watched her go, not with hate, with closure. The kind of closure you never beg for. The kind that walks with you out of the room and never looks back. After, I stepped onto the courthouse steps into a blinding wall of flashbulbs. Reporters shouted questions. Do you have anything to say to your family? I paused. The noise fell away. Then, with my face calm and my voice clear, I said, "No, I already did. In court." Later that night, back in the lab, I sat with the lights dimmed and two files open. One labeled Final Patent Draft, the other, Legacy Rewritten. Leo and Leora were asleep in the bassinet beside me, their breaths soft, their presence louder than any court order. I reached for my journal, the one I'd carried since freshman year. On the final page I wrote, "They erased me once, but now I am documented, verified, permanent." They erased me once. I didn't fight to be remembered. I built something too real to ignore. The morning light filtered through the sheer curtains of our kitchen. I was standing barefoot on the tile, hands resting on my belly, now softer, not with a child, but with the ache of everything that had come before. Leo and Leora were giggling in the next room, voices colliding with the clink of blocks and the thud of tiny feet. Their laughter had become my metronome, the cadence of healing. Silas was at the back of the house, stringing up a wooden swing beneath the pergola. The small grove we had planted, just 3 trees, had already begun to take root. Lemon, orange, and a fig tree for their grandmother, even if her silence still rang louder than her memory. This was our morning rhythm now. The world had stopped shouting. I could hear myself again, until the doorbell rang. A brown parcel. No return address. Wrapped in plain craft paper and string, as though whoever sent it knew I would open it slowly. I did. Inside was a single photograph. My breath caught. It was the picture. The picture. The one from my childhood that had once hung on the Monroe hallway wall. The original had been edited years ago. I'd been cropped out. Just an elbow in a blue dress awkwardly protruding at the corner. But in this one, I was there, centered, smiling, my hair wind-blown and eyes squinting against the sun. Grandma had her arm wrapped around me, her other hand gently folding mine over something, her sapphire ring. I turned it over. In neat cursive, "This is the version that matters." Camden appeared in the doorway, wiping sawdust off his palms. "I found it," he said, tucked inside one of her albums, behind another frame. "I think she always meant for you to have it." I didn't say thank you. I didn't have to. We stood together in silence, the kind that follows storm and loss and knowing. Later that day, I took the kids to the garden behind the house. Leo pointed to the fig tree and declared it his. Leora threw a fistful of dirt like a blessing. I knelt beside them, hands in soil, watching the way roots took hold. In the quiet of nap time, I slipped back into the lab. The grant money from Savic's expansion had been approved, 1 million earmarked for rural diagnostic initiatives. The product was real, the platform live, the patents, mine. I opened the final build prototype and ran diagnostics. Everything ran clean. Just before closing my laptop, an alert popped up. Live conference invite, Phoenix Women in Science. Keynote slot confirmed. I accepted. That evening, the 3 of us sat under string lights, lemonade in hand. Silas grilled vegetables. Leo napped in a blanket. Leora pressed stickers to my laptop. "Do you feel done?" Silas asked. I looked at him, then down at my hands. They'd once trembled holding rejection letters, court subpoenas, pregnancy tests. Now they were steady, calloused, capable. I thought about my mother, how even in her silence she'd carved her fears into me like etchings. I remembered the way she clutched her purse when emotions rose, as if vulnerability might leak out through her seams. I thought about Serena, the woman who never looked at me like a daughter, only like a threat. About Mila, whose legacy was curated, not earned. About Victor, who could never bear being the second brightest in the room. I thought about Gregory and the way he stood beside me on that stage, not as a savior, but as a man trying, however late, to do something true. And I thought about myself. Not the girl who cried in a motel bathroom, not the woman who argued in court, but the person I had become when I stopped asking to be seen and started building something no one could ignore. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I walked inside, pulled a thick folder from the bookshelf, labeled Proof, Archived, and slipped it into the firebox. Not because I wanted to forget, but because I no longer needed to fight for what was already mine. The next morning, I stepped onto the stage in Phoenix. This time, not as a plaintiff, not as a sister, as a founder. The spotlight was warm but not blinding, the audience quiet but eager. My name is Arlena Sloan, I began, and I built this company not in spite of what I lost, but because of it. Slide after slide, I shared impact numbers, lives reached, women diagnosed earlier, clinics equipped, communities changed, every metric a rebuttal to the legacy that had tried to claim me. Toward the end, I clicked to the final slide. A photo, not of the lab, not of the courtroom, but of Leo and Leora asleep under the orange tree. This, I said, voice steady, is what reclamation looks like. Applause erupted, but I didn't cry. I didn't tremble. I walked off stage the same way I had once walked out of my mother's house, unbent, unbothered, unforgettable. I survived being erased, endured betrayal, and walked out of the shadows no longer needing to prove anything. Today, I am a mother, a founder, and a free woman, no longer tied to the names that once tried to write me out of my own story. What I've learned is simple. No one can take away your worth if you're brave enough to rebuild yourself. Justice doesn't always arrive early, but when it comes, it leaves no one untouched, no matter how high they once stood. Have you ever been betrayed by family or those closest to you? Have you ever had to prove your value in silence? Share your story in the comments, because your journey might just be the strength someone else needs. If you've ever been forced into silence, stay tuned. The next video will feature those who turned pain into power.